George Floyd.
George Floyd.
George Floyd.
George Floyd repeatedly told the officers that he could not breathe after an officer knelt on his neck.
The family of George Floyd held a memorial in his memory.
My brother's gone, but the Floyd name still lives on.
George Floyd, you are gone but not forgotten. Because of you, we've come together.
This is for George Floyd.
It's all right to be angry, but we're going to take our anger and our indignation and turn it into energy.
George Floyd! George Floyd! Justice! Justice!
To march, to dance, to kneel, to be quiet. We're saying your name. We're saying their names. We're being loud.
Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot!
We're being brave. We're laughing. We're crying. We're getting engaged. We're getting married. We're changing the world.
We soldiers, man. Let's stop hurting each other and let's get it right, man. Today is the day we're gonna stand up for our community, man. If we could do this, we could do more. We just gotta continue on pushing and don't give up.
He did what?
That changed the world.
Daddy changed the world.
My name is Raisha bin Farid. The title of this article is The Movement of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a decentralized political and social movement that seeks to highlight racism, discrimination, and racial inequality experienced by Black people. Its primary concerns are incidents of police brutality and racially motivated violence against Black people. The thesis statement in this article is the Black Lives Matter movement is one that defends the freedom of Black people as well as the equality of Black people. The first main point in this article is Emmett Till's murder in Mississippi for alleged flirting with a white woman on August 28, 1995. Okay, the next supporting details. The first supporting details, according to Hassan in 2021, it stated that Emmett Till is accused of flirting, touching, or whistling at Caroline Bryant. However, details of the store encounter are disputed. This can be seen that even a young boy like Emmett Till have been accused for no reasons. Other than that, according to Hailstorm 2018, stated that Emmett Till was taken by force and subjected to physical abuse and suffering before being shot in head and thrown in Tallahatchie River where he drowned. This is shown that the white people do not even care about the law when it comes to black people, even an innocent boy like Emmett Till. Furthermore, Emmett Till's brutalized body as a media spectacle and the trial of his murderers as displays of white supremacy brutally by Hailstorm 2018. In this matter, it is shown that the white people have become brutal that involving the black people because of they think that the black people should not have the same level as they are. Lastly, according to Hailstorm in 2018, it also stated that Emmett Till's cases that is known for its brutality, young victims, and acquittal of confessing murderers, it has been symbolized the suffering of black people in the South. This is most of the people must see how to black people have been treated unfairly in the South. Okay, thank you. That's all from me, and I will pass to the next presenter.
So I will continue the presentation by talking about the movement of Black Lives Matter. The hot cases is the murder of George Floyd on 25 May 2020 that makes the Black Lives Matter movement more aggressive in defending the rights of black people. The tragedy of Floyd death was infuriated black people. This is happened when the police officer kneeling on George Floyd's neck for almost 10 minutes and causing him to unable to breathe. The incident began when the convenience store employee called 911 to report that the Floyd had purchased cigarette with a counterfeit $20 bill. After that, when the police officer arrived, they pulled a gun on Floyd, who initially cooperated as he was arrested. This shows that the police officer conduct was extremely unprofessional and against the policy. I can infer from the video that Derek Chauvin, the police officer, display racist behavior. Effect to the George Floyd deaths, there are huge number of protests in over 2,000 cities and towns across the United States and other countries. Around the world, especially in United States, the Floyd murder case has sparked outrage and upheaval. To conclude these cases, it shows that the black people are not treated equally to the white people. This exposes a grave injustice towards black people and endanger their security. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Husni Izzati binti Hassan, and today I'll be presenting about the third main idea. Third main idea, inequality treatments toward black people. The first supporting details is about the residential segregation is not a coincidence. It has severe consequences on the lives of black and brown people. These consequences include exposure to environmental hazards, poor education, police harassment, surveillance, and even theft. All of these are due to the forced separation of black people and white people by place. By absorbing the fact that there are disparities in resident at United States and the racial inequalities have led United States in the midst of serious crisis. Residential segregation also led to that where the inheritance of white supremacy and the secondary position of black and brown people cause it. Since the creation of housing policies in 1930, the spatial disparities between white and black people have risen. For example, there is discrimination regarding the rental and sale of housing. It causes residential segregation by race and shapes whiteness supremacy. The second supporting details is about structural inequalities limit opportunities for black people who are subjected to various forms of abuse by a system intended to keep them without hope or chance. The violence against black people has affected the young black generation. Black people have been neglected and faced abuse since they were kids. Most of them are not live to live, but live to survive. The parents are raising their children with neglect that they face, so the cycle continues. Since the 1970s, there have been statements that mention emotionally, socially, and psychologically preparing black children to understand the questions of races. The third supporting details is about individuals seeking education face limited access to resources in public schools caused by race. The violence against black people all started at individual levels, but as time goes by, the violence is not towards the black individual, but also towards the black lives. All the black children that live in the violent era have caused barriers in their education. They live in overwhelming fear and it affects their whole life. For supporting details, there are disparities in wealth and educational attainment based on race, as well as instances of racial profiling. By Owen's 2020, black people's accomplishments in terms of education have been downgraded. Black people have been under oppression that did not allow them to have equal opportunities in education. Black Americans still want to have quality education for their generation. They even sacrifice their lives and bodies, but the others have belittled their educational accomplishment. The case of Kelly Williams Bola is one of the examples that black people earn inadequate education sources. Kelly Williams sends her child to completed sources of schools, and she has been sent to the jail for 3 years. Therefore, it shows that there is inequalities toward black people.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Fakir binti Ahmad Tajuddin. So I will continue with the second issue, which is the injustice that leads to a discrimination among the black people. So based on the journal written by the Messenger 2017, he explained that most of the black people had become a prisoner of the police and their life were mercilessly at stake. They have been discriminated not only on right but also on law. Truth to be told, this is also the problem for them when any suspicious made by the black people will be labeled as a criminals without a full investigation of what happened. Furthermore, everyone who violates any types of legal provision should be brought to the justice regardless of their background. In a statement written by the James Baldwin, there is a misunderstanding between the blacks and white. That is racial injustice throughout the era. A rule and law were specifically drafted for all those involved in committing an offence, accompanied by appropriate fines and the punishment. If they are accused of a crime that they have never committed, it's a fear that it could not hold the anger and discontent of many parties. Okay, all persons are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. So the racial profiling that happens to the black people is something that everyone emphasizes because the use of race will cause them to be suspected of being criminal who bring offense to the local community. So this situation will cause these black people to become a target for the public as well, as the police arresting them without any solid evidence and interrogation first. So they are accused of the crime that did not commit, and they are tortured so brutally that it caused to death. So for instance, this was reported by the BBC News where the black jogger Ahmaud Arbery who being killed by the 3 men in Georgia, and it has received a widespread attention. So the community where the accident occurred is tense as the trial concludes. And the shooting was occurred on 23 February 2020 during the confrontation with the accused, Georgery and Travis McMichael. Additionally, the suspects were not taken into custody until more than 2 months after the accident occurred, and a neighbor who recorded the death was also arrested. To summarize, the discrimination and injustice against the black people are widespread issues that are deeply embedded in the society, institution and structures. And achieving the true equality and justice for the black people require systemic change and a collective effort to tackle and overcome the root causes of the discrimination.
The United Kingdom had large Black Lives Matter protests in the summer of 2020. Thousands of people participated in demonstrations in cities across the country, including London, Birmingham, Bristol and Manchester, which sparked by the death of George Floyd and a previous death of black transport worker in London, Belly Mujinga, who died from COVID-19 after an alleged racist attack. The protests were a response to the country's historical and systemic racism and were marked by the clashes between protesters and the police. Some protesters vandalized the statues of slave traders and political leaders, and celebrities joined the demonstration. After the protest, the government commissioned a report that rejected claims of systemic racism and in March 2021 introduced a bill that would give police greater power to restrict protests, which inspired a new round of protests with rallying cry, "Kill the bill." Activists feel that progress made during the protest has been undermined by the government's action.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Razak Berasini. That is on how BLM protests shaped the movement globally. It can be seen in the news of Floyd's death was booked by two notorious police killings domestically in Colombia. In the case of Anderson Arboleda on May 19, 2020, police in Coca are alleged to have beaten 24 years old Anderson Arboleda, who later died from his injuries. The reason why is Arboleda had been suspected of breaking the Department of Tree's quarantine curfew. Just 6 days later, in the United States, Minneapolis officials killed George Floyd by leaning on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. As the United States and the rest of the world turned their attention to hashtag Black Lives Matter, Colombia artists and activists have highlighted the case of Arboleda, a horrific death of young black Afro-Colombian unarmed men at the hands of police. There have been protests throughout the country this summer, where mostly young black protesters marched in the capital to protest the death of Anderson Arboleda. Protesters were motivated by the killing of Arboleda and Floyd and marched to the U.S. Embassy in Bogota. In addition, local activist organizations claim that at least 43 people have been murdered during recent protests in Colombia over injustice and police brutality. There has been a call to end anti-black violence in Colombia, with the Afro-Colombian activists speaking out against the police brutality and structural racism. Protesters believe that the risk of murder will not discourage them from continuing to oppose police violence and institutional cruelty. Apart from that, those movements are happen to raise awareness in other countries about the movement as well as the suppression of the black people. So, to conclude that the Black Lives Matter movement have evolved dramatically in recent years, with protests playing a crucial role in influencing the movement worldwide. Protests by the Black Lives Matter have taken place in cities and towns all over the world, resulting in significant changes in the legislation, policy, and the public opinions. That's all from me. Thank you.
The first suggestion is the Black Lives Matter movement has been effective in normalizing equality by raising social awareness by consistently and adaptably addressing issues of police violence, recognizing and humanizing victims, and highlighting racism and injustice. This issue not only raise awareness but also enhance cultural understanding. Protests and virtual discussion have led to a change in perspective. Social media, particularly Twitter, plays a significant role in the movement. The death of George Floyd and the online debate spark has emphasized the importance of naming victims in building empathy and solidarity with the BLM movement's aim. The movement has grown in popularity and social media reflect this, with an increase in participation and social engagement over time. Identifying victims promotes empathy and contributes to creating a historical record and societal change. The movement continues to push for systemic change and dismantle structural racism in society. And while it has already made an impact, there is still much work to be done in achieving racial justice and equality. The second suggestion is collaborating with allies to form coalitions in strategic approach to fight injustice and promote equality. The Black Lives Matter movement effectively raised awareness and established allies through supportive personal relationships and public acts of sponsorship and advocacy. Allies can increase their impact by forming groups with colleagues, connecting with like-minded individuals by using evidence-based tactics, and fostering interaction through networking, mentoring, and professional development. The movement gained support from other social and political movements such as LGBTQ+ rights movement, women's rights, and movement for marginalized groups, as indicated by the use of related hashtags on social media. Examples include hashtag Black Lives Matter UK, hashtag Black Trans Lives Matters, hashtag LGBTQ, hashtag MeToo, and hashtag Anonymous. The hashtags used in conjunction with Black Lives Matter reflect the movement intersectionality, global expansion, and alliances with other social and political movements. In conclusion, the Black Lives Matter movement is a call to action to address systemic racial inequalities and discrimination faced by the Black people. It gained momentum with the death of George Floyd, Emmett Till, and Belly Mujinga, bringing issues of police brutality and systemic racism to the forefront. The movement aims to fundamentally re-evaluate and dismantle systems that allow racism to persist, with the ultimate goal of recognizing the humanity and dignity of the Black people and creating a society where they can live without fear, oppression, and discrimination. It calls for individuals to educate themselves and others about the history and ongoing impact of racism, support Black-led organizations, actively engage in conversations about race and racism, and take action to challenge racist systems in their own lives and communities. It highlights the need for society to come together and take action to create a more just and equitable world.